We want to suggest to you that which puts all the pieces of the jigsaw together to give you the big picture, the Islamic eschatology, is saying to us that the time has come for the United States of America to be replaced as the ruling state in the world. And for those young students who we have here today, and there's so many of them, let us explain what is a ruling state. To rule the world as a ruling state does not mean that you have to rule every square inch of downtown Chicago and Jakarta. No! A ruling state, when we use the term, is a state whose power and dominance in the world cannot be challenged by any rival or combination of rivals. In this sense of the word, the holy state of Israel, established by Nabi Dawood alayhi salam, the Prophet David, and Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, the Prophet Solomon, was the ruling state in the world. And Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam made the dua which is in the Quran, that Allah may grant that no state in history could ever rival this state, the holy state of Israel. And so came the status of a ruling state. You know about Jerusalem in the Quran, I forgot it over there, it's at the back. Jerusalem in the Quran, we explain the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about three ruling states. Three ruling states created by Dajjal in his 3 stages of his mission. Before Dajjal will emerge in this world of space and time as a human being. He would be a Jew. He would be a young man. He would be powerfully built. He would have curly hair. And from Jerusalem he's going to declare, I am the Messiah. And all the Zionists, the Christian Zionists and the Jewish Zionists and their followers, would say, yes, he is the Messiah. But you and I know that would be a lie. He is someone who has been created and programmed to impersonate the Messiah. And you and I know that the Messiah is the son of Mary, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, the Prophet Jesus. He would be Dajjal, the false Messiah. And the time has now arrived in the process of history where, after having created Britain as the first ruling state with something that they call Pax Britannica, and then having caused or engineered the collapse of Britain and its replacement with the United States of America as a second ruling state in the world with something that they call Pax Americana, we have now reached that moment in time using our methodology which they reject. Protestant Islam rejects our methodology, and Protestant Islam says, don't listen to Imran Hosein. Don't listen to him. He has no Aqidah. He's a Sufi. Well, go ahead. Go ahead. But you're still my brothers. And I don't speak disrespectfully of you. But this methodology is delivering the goods. This methodology is explaining the world today. And I won't end without explaining the methodology. That we are now located at that moment in time, and I'm addressing you now, Protestant Islam, when Dajjal's day like a month is ending, and his day like a week is beginning, and a new ruling state is emerging, which will replace the United States of America. That is the big picture. The jigsaw puzzle has now been put together. Israel wants to replace the United States of America as the third and last ruling state in the world. You have never said that, Protestant Islam. We are saying it. And guess what? The Muslims around the world are convinced that we are correct. And we thank Allah who gave us the insight to be able to see the big picture through Islamic eschatology. When Israel takes over from the United States, and the financial crash and the economic crash and the military crash and the hatred for the United States around the world and so on are all part of the agenda to bring down the United States. When Israel takes over from the United States and the world, then Israel must establish its political and economic dominion over the whole world. And the first people that have to rule will be the Arabs. Of course. Otherwise no Jew will accept this as a ruling state. And so the Arab Spring has come at this time to facilitate the wars that Israel will have to wage in order to subdue the Arab world and establish an Israeli political and economic dominion over the Arab world. And yet Arab Islamic scholarship knows nothing about this. Arab Islamic scholarship knows absolutely nothing about it. That is our predicament today, that we need a new generation of scholars of Islam using the methodology that we are offering to be able to read the world correctly. It is at this time that we have to ask, why is it that Protestant Islam has emerged at this time with an insistence that religion is based on texts, that your hands have to be here and not here, and that your feet have to be like this and not like this, and that your pants or your pajama must reach here and not there? I'm still using respectful language. You should have heard my teacher, Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah. He thundered at them 40 years ago. He gave them, he blasted them left, right and center. But Imran doesn't have his thunder. My teacher of blessed memory, Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah. This Salafi version of the faith, and remember Salafis, you are my brothers, and I am not picking up boxing gloves against you. This is an academic, an intellectual discourse. We differ. Why can't we differ? Why can't we exchange views without hatred for each other? Why? You are my brothers, but that does not mean that you are immune from my offering a valid criticism of a methodology which is incapable of recognizing why the financial crash is taking place now, why the economic crash is taking place now, whereas our methodology is explaining why it is taking place now. And there's something else which is happening at this time. The pieces are coming together. We have a group called the Tabligh Jamaat, who have fanned out around the world. And they are beautiful brothers. Oh yes. When you see the way they live, you see how they are regular in their salat, they dress in a particular way, they're conforming with the sunnah, you say, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. I don't think we can fit Tabligh Jamaat in the blue jeans Jamaat, can we? You know the blue jeans Jamaat. But why is it that at this particular time, when we face a challenge different from any that we have ever faced before, that we should now have this Protestant version of Islam with that epistemology and with this gathering of large numbers of people, 500,000 ijtima in downtown Chicago? Dajjal is not bothered at all about that. Why? They show no concern whatsoever They show, Tabligh Jamaat shows absolutely no concern whatsoever with Islamic eschatology that would explain the reality of the world today and which would anticipate the events which are unfolding today and tomorrow. I say that this is not happening by accident, and it is time for us to deliver a wake-up call, lovingly of course, not with boxing gloves, to all those who are members of the Tabligh Jamaat, the only Jamaat in the world, incidentally, which has closed the doors of the masjid to me wherever in the world I have gone. I cannot go into a masjid controlled by Tabligh Jamaat to teach them that which they do not know. And they don't have the teachers to teach it. Most of the Salafi masjids are the same except for, and may Allah bless him, Sheikh Faiz in Sydney. Sheikh Faiz, who is the foremost Salafi Sheikh of Australia, graduate of the Islamic University of Medina. And when I was in Australia for my second visit in 2002, Sheikh Faiz came to my home where I was staying and brought a Lebanese breakfast one morning so we could sit down and have Lebanese breakfast, and then invited me to his center to give a lecture on Islam and the international monetary system. And before the lecture could take place, he asked me to come into his office. And he said to me, Sheikh Imran, I want to become your student. Those were the words he spoke to me. Well, he's such a learned man, I should be his student. Why is it? Why can't we give you a wake-up call and yet remain brothers with each other? Because your methodology is wrong. You're putting your head in the sand like an ostrich in Tabligh Jamaat and not paying attention to understanding events unfolding in the world is dangerous for the Ummah. It's like sleepwalking through history. I thought Ronald Reagan was the only one who did it. But that's what you're doing, Tabligh Jamaat. Do not be annoyed with me. Do not be offended, because you are my brothers. Now let's come to the methodology. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that every prophet warned about Dajjal. And the Prophet Nuh alayhi salam warned about Dajjal. But I'm going to tell you something that no one has ever said before me. Dajjal sees with the left eye, he's blind in the right eye, it looks like a bulging grip. Dajjal sees with the left eye, he's blind in the right eye, it looks like a bulging grip. But your Lord is not one-eyed. Between his eyes on his forehead is written the word kafir, kafir, kafir. And every mu'min will be able to read it, whether that mu'min is literate or illiterate. And so Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu will be able to read it. Kafir. But Tony Blair won't be able to read it. You know, he was just convicted for war crimes right here in KL. So we sent Tony Blair to the eye specialist. Check out his eyes. Why he cannot read, this kafir. Oh, when you're sending Tony Blair, send George Bush also with him. And then the report comes, nothing wrong with their eyes. Well, then how come they can't read, but the mu'min can read? We say, and this is our viewpoint, you don't have to accept it, is that when Dajjal sees with the left eye, this is religious symbolism at work, that he is seeing with external sight. And when he is blind in the right eye, this is religious symbolism at work, that he is internally blind. And that's why the kafir cannot read. Because when the mu'min reads, he's not reading with these eyes alone. He's reading with internal sight. And did the Prophet not say sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. I wish I had another 1 hour to deal with the subject. He said, ittaqu firasat al-mu'min فَإِنَّهُ يَنْظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ. Fear the firasa. The firasa is that hikmah or that wisdom of the believer, which is intuitive in nature and founded on spirituality. Fear the intuitive, internal spiritual insight or wisdom of the mu'min, because when he sees with the nur of Allah. And so this hadith is speaking about epistemology and about spirituality. The absolute imperative of pursuing the spiritual quest, so that you'll have internal nur with which to see, and so that you have a chance of walking in the path of Khidr alayhi salam. After all, it is Suratul Kahf of the Quran, which is the surah of Ilmu Akhir Zaman par excellence. And Khidr alayhi salam is different from the rest because you'll only meet him where? You will meet him at Majma'ul Bahrain. Majma'ul Bahrain, the place where the two oceans meet. Which two oceans? Go to Imam al-Baydawi and his tafsir. The ocean of knowledge externally acquired, the ocean of knowledge internally received. When these two oceans of knowledge come together, as they did in my teacher of blessed memory, Maulana Dr. Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah, when these two oceans come together in an individual, in a scholar, and are harmoniously integrated, only then do you have the scholar who can take all the pieces together and solve the jigsaw puzzle and deliver to you the big picture. And so today we address them, Protestant Islam, and we ask you to take another look at epistemology and at spirituality, the methodology that we are offering. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا يَا مَوْلَانَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ آمين. There is a well-known Sahih hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said that you're going to make an alliance with Rum. Is it in Surah Al-Rum? Rum. And in that surah we are told at the very first ayah that Rum was defeated. Rum was defeated. Did you hear that? Rum was defeated. But in a few years' time, Rum will be victorious. Who is Rum? Now, if you tell me that Rome is Rome, R-O-M-E, I would suggest you go and live in Disneyland and never come back. If you believe that Rome is Rome, R-O-M-E, go and live in Disneyland and never come back. Excuse me for raising my voice. At the time when the Quran was revealed, who was it who was defeated? Was it a city in Italy, you dum-dum? Why don't you do a little bit of research before you come to this foolish conclusion? Excuse me. No, even 5 rupees worth of a little bit of research. You'll know that when the Quran said that Rome was defeated, the Quran was not talking about a city in Italy called Rome. No. The Quran was talking about the Byzantine Christian Empire, which had its capital city in Constantinople. I mean, only 5 minutes worth of research you need for that. And so don't use the word Romans. No, they're not Romans. Romans are a people who have some kind of a connection with Rome. Otherwise I have to change the English language. Huh? And these are in Constantinople. This is not Rome. So these are not Romans. So stop mistranslating the Quran, please. It is the Byzantine, Eastern, Orthodox, Christian Empire. Where is Rome today? It's no longer in Constantinople because the Byzantine Empire no longer exists. But the Eastern Christian Orthodox Church and religion still exists. That is Rome. Who it is who now leads that community of Eastern Christian Orthodox believers? The answer is Russia. That's the answer. And so when the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, that you will make an alliance with Rome, he was certainly not talking about a Yankee alliance. Someone should tell that to the Pakistan Armed Forces. He was not talking about an alliance with Britain, or with France, or with Germany, or with Israel. When he spoke about an alliance with Rome, he was referring to an alliance with the Eastern Christian Orthodox Church. And therefore to those who now rule over that community, which is Russia. Russia. And so a Muslim alliance with Russia is anticipated by the Prophet ﷺ, and it will come. How soon this will happen? He also said that you will conquer Constantinople. And what a wonderful army that would be. نِعْمَ هَذَا الْجَيْشِ وَنِعْمَ هَذَا الْأَمِيرُ. What a wonderful army that would be, and what a wonderful Amir that would be who will conquer Constantinople. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam used the name, in this hadith, he used the name Constantinople. If the Prophet of Allah called it Constantinople, why did you change the name to Istanbul? I know the answer. Because you want to hide this hadith. That's why you change the name to Istanbul. But we should refer to it by the name that Nabi Muhammad ﷺ used, Constantinople. This has to be a conquest of Constantinople in Akhirul Zaman. It cannot be that conquest which took place so many years ago, 100 years ago. This conquest of Constantinople will come, I believe, when the next attempt at a coup d'etat takes place in Turkey. You know, Turkey always have the coup d'etats. But you now have a Muslim government that is attempting to establish Islam and is opposed to Israel in Turkey. And you have an armed forces in Turkey which are supporting Israel. And so you're heading for a showdown. Whenever the effort is made by the armed forces to take over the country and overthrow the government, I think that's the cue for civil war. And the outcome of that civil war is what is prophesied in this hadith, the conquest of Constantinople. When that conquest of Constantinople takes place, NATO will lose Constantinople. NATO will therefore lose its control over the Bosphorus. At this time, Russian ships, Russian submarines, Russian nuclear submarines cannot pass through the Bosphorus to enter into the Mediterranean Sea because NATO controls them. But once that NATO control is destroyed by that Muslim army and Constantinople is liberated and you have an alliance with Russia as prophesied in the hadith, then the Russian navy can enter into the Mediterranean. The Russian submarines can enter into the Mediterranean from the Black Sea. And then the contest with Israel will become a more even-handed contest once you have nuclear-armed submarines in the Mediterranean. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. As we greet you, our Muslim brothers and sisters there in France, with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You are going through a very difficult period of your existence as a community in France. But you have been going through difficulties even before this last one occurred. Life had been becoming increasingly difficult, a trial for you. And now life has become impossibly difficult and you are in a state of quandary. What to do? How should we respond? What's going on in France? Many of you have parents who migrated from Algeria, from Morocco, from Tunisia, from Libya, from North Africa, and you were born in France, and you consider France to be your home, but no, it's not your home. If your parents left North Africa, Algeria, that is home. That is home. And even though you were born in France, you should go back home. My advice to you at this time is to go back home. The mastermind who is at work is a mastermind who is more evil than any evil the world has ever known and the world will ever know. This is an evil force which is unscrupulous. This is an evil force which has no problems in telling mountains of lies. This is an evil force which has no problem at all in launching false flags attacks and then blaming it on you. This is what you're dealing with. This is an evil force which does not mind if, in order to achieve his objective, all of mankind have to die. Millions and millions and millions have to die. It does not matter to him. That evil force, that evil being, our Islamic eschatology has already told us, that evil being wants to rule the world. And so Russia must submit to him, and China must submit to him. But Russia will not submit to him, no. And so long as Russia does not submit, because Orthodox Christianity will not bend its knee before him, no. So long as Russia does not submit, then all of Eastern Europe will not submit. So long as Russia does not submit to him, China also will not submit to him. And so that's why they decided to destroy Russia. in the revolution of 1917. And then for 70 years after that, destroying the Christian foundations of Russia. But they planned their plans, and Allah planned his plans. And now communism and the Soviet Union is in the garbage bin of history. And Russia is returning to its Christian roots. Russia is returning to Orthodox Christianity, in which a man does not marry another man. Is it so difficult to recognize where is Christianity today? Where are those who follow Jesus, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, and who say of themselves that they are Christians? Is it so difficult to recognize them? Does the Christian religion permit a man to marry another man? Russia will not bend its knee. No. Russia will not bend its knee on the monetary scam that is called the monetary system today. And that's why BRICS has been established as a challenge to it. And that's why they're attacking Russia. So the evil force which just showed its hand in France with yet another false flag attack, and which will show its hand again perhaps in Germany tomorrow with yet another false flag attack. They never tire of telling lies. They got PhDs in telling lies, these people. That evil force wants to rule the world. He doesn't want to rule the world from Paris, no, or from Washington, no, not from London, no. He wants to rule the world from Jerusalem. Is that so difficult for you to understand? Those of you who consider France to be heaven, and consider United States to be heaven, and consider Canada to be heaven, and consider Australia to be heaven, is that so difficult for you to understand? When will you wake up? He wants to rule the world from Jerusalem. And he's almost there now. It should not be long again. But on the way to Jerusalem, look at the number of people who have to be killed unjustly. Look at the amount of blood which must flow unjustly for him to reach Jerusalem ruling the world. It doesn't matter to him, but it matters to those who follow Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Because we are not a people like the Orthodox Christians. We are not a people who submit to an oppressor. We are not a people who submit to oppression. No. You cannot stand up against the oppressor while living in France. No. If you want to continue to reside in France, you've got to shut your mouth. You know that. Is that the way you're going to stand up to the oppressor? Just to live the good life? Huh? To love Paris and to live in Paris? And the price you have to pay is to take off your hijab? Is that what you want? Is the earth so narrow for you that you cannot find any way on Allah's earth where you will not have to betray him? Is that the price you're prepared to pay, that you now have to shave off your beard to be able to walk the streets in public? Is the earth not wide enough for you to find somewhere on Allah's earth where you can grow your beard? Because Allah put the beard there. The president of France didn't put it there. I call you back to the Quran, that the Quran might teach you that what comes tomorrow is going to be worse than what you have today. You're going to have to stop going to the masjid because going to the masjid identifies you as a Muslim and you might lose your job. What to do? The answer is make hijrah. You're not running away from the fight. No. Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam made hijrah. Was he running away from the fight? What nonsense, what rubbish. No. You are withdrawing from France so you can regain the freedom to stand up to the oppressor. That's what you're doing. And Allah's earth is wide. Alam takun ardullahi wasi'ah فَتُهَاجِرُ فِيهَا. And so I say to you Muslims of France, if you can make hijrah, do please make hijrah now before it's too late and you no longer have the freedom to leave France. You're not running away from the battle, no. You're leaving France to gain the freedom with which to fight the battle, to resist oppression and to resist the oppressor until justice is restored in the world. If you cannot leave France, then I say to you, get out of the cities and go to the remote countryside and live in small communities with a low profile if you are to survive. But if you want to choose to continue to live in Paris, then don't ask me what to do. Please don't waste my time, because I don't have any answer for you other than to make dua for you. I pray that Allah might wake you up so you understand the gravity of the moment. You understand that the enemy with who is now attacking you has no qualms whatsoever in doing the most evil things possible. There's never been a force more evil than this in all of human history. So wake up and make hijrah before it is too late to do so. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين. The Malay are such a polite people, mashallah, except when some of them get behind a motor car to drive. I don't know where the Malay kindness goes when they drive a motor car. They become like Long Island Expressway. But the Malay are such a polite people, mashallah. If an Islamic bank is truly Islamic, why does it not raise its voice and call for the return of dinar and dirham? If a former prime minister of this country could do that, why can't the Islamic Bank do that? Number one, they won't do it, and I know why they won't do it. Number two, Nabi Muhammad ﷺ would buy goods on credit, meaning you take the goods now and you pay later. And so a credit transaction is halal in Islam. But the shopkeeper never was allowed to raise his price because he had to wait for his money. No. If the shopkeeper raised his price because he had to wait for his money, the implication would be that money can increase over time. That's riba. And so in Islam, credit price and cash price are always the same. Is that so difficult to understand? Money has no time value in Islam. Yes, in Manhattan, but not in Islam. Islamic banks are engaged in a bogus transaction that they call murabaha, which brings in a substantial amount of their revenues. It's not murabaha. They call it murabaha. The house is on sale for well, if it's Damansara Utama, let's make it 500,000 ringgits, huh? That's too low? 1 million. A house is on sale in Damansara Utama for 1 million ringgits. And you don't have the 1 million to pay for it, cash. So you want to buy it the way the Prophet ﷺ would buy goods. on credit. But the shopkeeper, which is now the bank, raises the price and now sells you the house for a higher price and gives you time to pay. The shopkeeper, which is the Islamic bank, is now selling the house for 3 million ringgits. Whereas if you had the cash, you could buy it for 1 million ringgits. So the cash price is 1 million and the credit price is 3 million. You don't need a PhD to understand that this is riba, except that this is a worse riba than the one from the conventional banks. The conventional banks is riba through the front door, and Islamic banks is riba through the back door. Any more questions? Yeah. What analogy can we draw between the Freemasons and Al-Masih-ud-Dajjal? The Freemasonry movement has its origins and its roots in ancient Israel and in the Old Testament. A lot of the symbols which are used by the Freemasonry and a lot of the beliefs in the Freemasonry system comes out of the ancient scriptures, ancient Jewish scriptures. But the Jews have transformed the Freemasonry movement to be an international movement, not an exclusively Jewish movement. So that the link between Freemasonry and Judaism no longer exists today in the popular consciousness. So a Prime Minister of Australia can be a Freemason, yeah? And a Prime Minister of Britain who is not a Jew can be a Freemason. The reason why they have done that is so that they can use this movement, the Freemasonry movement, as a front through which they could pursue their objectives without allowing themselves to be identified as the actor. So they can remain as the hidden actor behind the Freemasonry and the Illuminati. Brothers and sisters here in Masjid India, in Kuala Lumpur, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is something very strange indeed as we address you tonight on the topic of the future of Islam in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Kashmir. Not the future of Muslims, Pakistanis, not the future of Bangladeshis, the future of Islam in this region of the world. At a time when very strange things are happening in the world. Very ominous things, dangerous things are happening in the world. It is clear for those who have been studying what's happening in the world that we are now located at a very, very dangerous moment in history. That in the same way you had the First World War 100 years ago, and then you had the Second World War about 70 years ago, that we are now located at that moment in time when the World War of World Wars is about to take place, about which Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam had prophesied. But he didn't call it World War. But the politicians in Pakistan and the politicians in Bangladesh and the politicians in India don't study this subject. Politicians don't study this subject. He didn't call it world wars. What did he call it? Nabi Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam spoke about the malhama. The malhama, the great war. So First World War and Second World War were only preparation for what is now about to occur. And it is going to impact on the whole world. But it is going to impact very significantly on India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. Israel is likely to launch those wars. It could be one of 4 targets. And you know it already. It could be Pakistan, and the Pakistanis know it. That's why the Israeli Mossad and the CIA combined to launch the 9/11 terrorist attack on America. Why? Because they wanted to get an opening into Afghanistan, so they could send a few 100,000 troops into Afghanistan, so they can use Afghanistan as the base to destabilize Pakistan. The only people who don't understand that are the politicians. Everybody else understands that. Because if a politician were to say, Israeli Mossad did 9/11, that's it, he's finished as a politician. The Zionists are not going to support him, they're going to finish with him. So the politicians know where they get their roti from. And so they'll know what to say and what not to say. And so an attack on Pakistan was prepared since 9/11, 10 years now. And the attack on Pakistan is meant to destroy Pakistan's nuclear plants and nuclear weapons. Why? Because Israel wants to rule the world. Anyone who has studied the Quran and Hadith properly would know that, because they have studied the subject of Dajjal. Israel wants to rule the world, so that a man can stand up in Jerusalem tomorrow, meaning about 20 years from now, and declare, I am the Messiah, Al-Masih. But we know that the Messiah or the Masih is Jesus, Nabi Isa alayhi salam. So who would he be? He would be Dajjal. In order for him to declare, I am the Messiah, he has to first make Israel the ruling state in the world. And then he can rule the world and say, I am the Messiah. That you understand already. But in order for Israel to rule the world, Israel has to wage great wars. And that's the malhama that's coming. But Israel cannot wage great wars if Muslims have a weapon with which they can significantly threaten Israel. And so no Muslim country must have nuclear weapons. That's the new religion of Israel. That's the new religion of Zionists. That Muslims must not have any weapon with which they can threaten Israel. But Pakistan has that, thanks to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who did many bad things, but this was a good thing that he did. Thanks to Ziaul Haq Marhum, who did some bad things, but alhamdulillah, he died as a mu'min and shaheed. And others as well, who not only brought Pakistan into the nuclear club, but kept Pakistan there. In order for an attack to be launched on Pakistan, to destroy Pakistan's nuclear plants and nuclear weapons, you will also have to break up Pakistan so that Pakistan can never revive itself. Because the Pakistanis are going to be very angry. Who is going to do that job? To break up Pakistan? You don't need a PhD to answer that question, do you? Israel's most strategic ally in the world today, after the United States, is India. India used to be secular India under the Indian National Congress. But now India has become Hindu India. And this Hindu India is joined with Israel in a strategic alliance. And so India is going to play a significant role in that effort to denuclearize Pakistan and to destroy and break up Pakistan into bits and pieces. I believe the Indian Muslims already know that. They know that. And so that is one of the possible wars that's coming. And so we have three possible battlegrounds already. One, Pakistan. Two, Iran. Three, Syria. And four, the fourth battleground is possibly Egypt. Because Israel wants part of Egypt's territory because of something in the Torah. The Torah says that the Holy Land extends from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. From the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. Meaning that part of Egypt, from the river Nile to the Red Sea, belongs to Israel. What do we do? Israel is going to strike. And India is Israel's most strategic ally in the world after United States. And because the attack on Pakistan is pre-planned, we know it's coming. And the plan is to create an independent Baluchistan, which will be another Libya, a Zionist state. And take part of Sarhad and put it into Afghanistan to make a greater Afghanistan, Bakhtunistan. And take that part of Pakistan which is called Azad Kashmir and make sure it goes back to India. And take part of Punjab and part of Sindh and absorb it into India. and maybe even create Karachi as a city-state. What remains of Pakistan would be bits and pieces that can easily be controlled by India and will now exist under Indian hegemony, political and economic and even cultural. Since we know that this is coming, what do we do? I want to now turn to a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam connected with India. The word India does not occur in the hadith. In the hadith it is the word Hind. Hind. And Ghazwa would be wars fought by the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. But because this is a war which will take place at the time of the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, perhaps for that reason it is known as Ghazwa. Allah knows best. Ghazwatul Hind. That there are hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and I am not in a position to assess their strength and authenticity, that there will be an end time, meaning Akhiru Zaman, conquest of India, or conquest of Hind, not India. But there is also an end time conquest of Constantinople. Constantinople. This one is a very well-established hadith, very strong, that the Prophet said sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam